So in 1913, when they were building the new front facade, they decided to clear out some of the old Mackay Villa walls and to make one large reception room. Of course, the nation growing up, there were greater hospitality needs, big events, and this became a very important room at Rideau Hall for those receptions. What they did is they basically cleared out the remnants of the oval from the Mackay dining room, which would be, in fact, where we're standing. They put in the big steel beams, and they just cleared out the old partitions. But it's easy to forget that from 1865 until 1913, many of the Mackay Villa vestiges were still here. The front steps, the stair, the partitions where we're standing.
So this room that we're standing in now was once divided by several walls to make different rooms.
That's right. There would have been a curve of the oval dining room, and then there would have been the antechamber where you'd come up, and then there'd be the stair up to the second floor. There were washrooms and so forth down the other end there. If you look down here, you can see this double window. That actually used to look out onto the farmyard, in fact, of the Mackay Villa. And many of the door placements are there, curiously, online with what the original doors were. If we look carefully, we can actually see vestiges of the Mackay Villa. You can see here that there's the oval curved wall here. That would have been the old garden facade. And when it was built in the 1830s, these would have been looking out across Bytown at the time, the small lumber town, military encampment. And the land would have been just recently cleared, so it would have been a clear view. Parliament Hill hadn't been built. It was just a nascent town. And we would have had, clear views across their garden, and then the fields below, New Edinburgh, and then Lower Town, looking towards the centre. If you look, you've got here doors still, but they've been changed. These aren't the original ones. In 1913, during that major construction campaign, there were many, many changes. So the baseboards and the trim are all from 1913. But if you look carefully, you can still see the original dining room layout.
And the walls.
The walls.
Are thick.
They're so thick. These would have been the load-bearing masonry walls built by Mackay's team when he was building his residence for the family. And, stone and interiors wise. And then lath and plaster. So we've got 1838 lath and plaster all through the building. It's wonderful. So 6 years after the Mackay Villa had been transformed into the official residence for the Governor-General, they were finding that the ceremonial needs were such that they didn't have a large space and they had to do something about it. And they decided in 1872 to construct the ballroom that we see here. It's essentially a large barn structure, heavy timber, and it had a brick facing with fancy stone coins on it. Beautiful, and there was a large chimney that gave a presence. Very, very large room. They would have everything from theater to gatherings to balls to dinners in there. So here we are at the front facade of Rideau Hall. I'm sometimes walking by and I'll hear people say, oh, it's the oldest part. In fact, it's one of the youngest parts. In 1913, when they infilled between the ballroom and the tent room to make this grand facade, it was the last major outbuild. There's been other additions, but nothing of this significance. It was designed and built in the early 20th century. Originally, they were planning something much more grand. If you can imagine that facade being out nearly towards the flagpoles in one of the early schemes that was rejected, and they pulled it back to something more restrained. But it's very imposing. I've heard a rumor that maybe this is the largest pediment in the British Commonwealth. It would be great if somebody could confirm that one way or the other.
Talk to me about the carriage house as well, or the porte-cochere.
We call this the porte-cochere. It was originally the drop-off point for the Mackay Villa, and when they rebuilt in 1913 this whole west facade, they chose the foundation locations from some of the Mackay vestiges. It's designed, you see the tall arch, it's designed so that a rider on horseback pulling the carriage, the ceremonial carriage, could do the drop-off at the front door. And if you look, there's a original vintage 1913 chandelier that probably they'd measured to the inch for those horseback riders coming through. There's some wonderful photographs of ceremonial, the landau being pulled and dropped off here. So from here you can see the original Mackay Villa, or what's left of it. The curved facade in there would have been the facade of his dining room, and then above his drawing room, looking out over the town and the fields. When he built it, I believe that he chose to do this oval shape, because how many masons can do an oval shape? You have to be a master mason, and of course he had a skilled team from having built the Rideau Canal, and prior to that the Lachine Canal. And I think that this was him tooting his horn, doing something that's highly complex. 20 years ago when we were fixing stones on there, it was such a complex geometry that we actually had to trace it like an Etch-a-Sketch in order to lay out what were the stones to be reproduced to infill. If you look, you can see there's a very tall chimney. There would have been a chimney on each side on this facade, and then the same set of chimneys further back. Those have been lost over the years, but we see 1865 chimneys all along the roof line. The color was yellow. For years we thought they were gray chimneys. They were painted gray under the stucco, but when we started to work on them we discovered that they were yellow brick. And of course it makes sense. Those are utilitarian appurtenances servicing the lower kind of formal residence. Between the curved facade from Mackay and what we have here, the other one, you've got a stretch of ashlar masonry with the tall windows. That's the wing that was built out in 1865 to ready the Mackay Villa for use as the interim residence for the Governor General. And you know, as an interim residence, you look at the scale and we go, oh my! But they weren't messing around. It was done on a very heavy construction. The beams are super solid, ashlar limestone, and you know, it was built to last. 1865 up until 1913, it had cedar shingle, pine shingle roof on it, and then they put the copper that we see, and so there's been copper, this green aesthetic with the gray walls since 1913.